My testimony, it's a little bit of a long story, but I'm going to try and make it short. I grew in a troubled, broken home. My father was extremely violent. There was lots of physical abuse towards me, my little sister, and my mom. Both my parents were drug addicts. Both of them were alcoholics. It's something that was my entire childhood. At 9 years old, my mom wanted to escape the violence. And so one night, in the middle of the night, she grabbed me and my sister up out of the bed, and all I can really remember is running down the street barefoot, trying to get out of the house. My mom filed for a divorce. My dad was not very cooperative and decided to leave the country to avoid those proceedings or pay child support. I did not see him again until I was an adult, which was fine. I don't have really any positive memories anyway, so it wasn't a huge loss. At least that's not the way I remembered it. My mom at the time was a housewife, and without the child support, we went from poor to poor. We stayed with family for a little bit, stayed with friends for a little bit. Eventually, we ended up squatting in abandoned homes and apartment complexes. Before I think we ended up in the projects right around when I was about 11. Over those few years, I began becoming a troublemaker, began becoming very rebellious. By the age of 13, I was smoking marijuana on a pretty consistent basis. At the age of 14, I came up with the genius idea that I was going to sell weed to help myself and my mom out. I know I was very bright at that age. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Between the ages of 14 and 22, I was arrested over 15 times for possession of drugs, distribution of drugs, gun charges. At the age of 21, I had, in my mind, as a 21-year-old drug dealer, made it. I had over $100,000 saved. I had a house paid for, several cars, a great girlfriend, lots of parties, was transporting and selling 500 pounds of marijuana a week. I was, in my mind, on top of the world. It was at that point during that time that I realized that although I had everything I wanted, I was I just wasn't very happy. I don't know what, it was just something missing. It was hard to put my finger on it, even looking back on it, there was just something missing. Just like I didn't have peace, I didn't really have joy, I didn't have comfort. So in search of that, outside of my partying, I did a couple of inspirational self-help books. I began checking out a couple of churches. And I can remember the first time that I walked into church, walking through the front door is just a very simple one where you got the wedding aisle going down. I remember walking in there and I felt like I was going to get set on fire. I knew I didn't belong there. I literally felt like I was going to burst into flames. And I knew my lifestyle wasn't right. I didn't really know anything about the Bible or about God at that point, but I knew that clearly I was not on the home team at that point. So I found a spot to sit down. I remember the collection plate going by and thinking, you know what, I always kept a wad of cash on me. I'm gonna do the right thing. I'm gonna contribute. And, I'm trying to get that peace, trying to get that joy. And I remember reaching in my pocket, and it was the first impression I ever got from God. I distinctly remember not hearing from him verbally. I've never heard from God verbally, but just having that distinct impression, I don't want your money. Or more specifically, I don't want that drug money. And left that money in my pocket, knew that I was not doing myself any favors that day, and heard the message. And I don't want to say I felt convicted, but I could tell. I could tell that I was going down the wrong path, and that here I was being presented with the right path. And continued going to service, but the problem was I didn't do anything about it. I did zero, because I knew that in order to get what they were talking about, had to give up my lifestyle, had to give up selling drugs, had to give up partying, had to give up smoking weed. I didn't want to do any of that. I didn't want to give any of that up. I wanted the peace and the joy. I didn't want to do all these other little things. And so I really didn't do anything about it, just kept going to service. And I think it was at that point where God's like, okay, try to do it the easy way, we'll do it the hard way. Which, if you look in my life, you'll notice there's a reoccurring theme of me liking to do things the hard way. So shortly thereafter, the FBI and the ATF arrested me. My world came crashing down literally overnight. Was arrested for transporting large amounts of drugs over various states, and I lost everything. The feds seized my house and my cars. I lost family, which was probably the hardest thing. I didn't realize how badly I had hurt them in the process. I lost friends, lost my girlfriend. What money the feds didn't take went to lawyers, of course. And my freedom and independence, of course. I was stripped down to nothing. So I ended up getting 8 years in prison. And 8 years in prison. All right, that's what I served. 8 years in prison. And the first year and a half, I remember going through trying to recognize that obviously I was on the wrong track and trying to fix things. So I decided that I was going to try and do little things to try and fix, get rid of drugs, get rid of cursing, make sure I wasn't gambling, little things like this. All the meanwhile, I was trying to search for the truth because I didn't really know what the truth was. I had never really been exposed to the Bible, didn't really know too much about Jesus or anything like that. So I began reading all kinds of stuff. I began reading the Bible, the Quran, books on Catholicism, books on Protestantism, books on the Vedas, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever I could get my hands on. But the thing while I was going through it stuck out the most to me was the Bible. I don't know what it was. I couldn't really put my finger on it, but it just kind of stood out amongst the bunch. So I began reading more books dealing directly with the Bible, stuff dealing with like the translations and the authors and the prophecies and the historical accuracies. And the more and more I was just in this Bible, it just, I don't know, I can't even really explain it. I'm sure you guys have gone through similar things. It's just something that's just slowly started convicting me. The more I was in the Word, the more I wanted to be in the Word. And it just started slowly transforming me. I began a prayer life. I think that the turning point was not just a prayer life, but I actually began a personal relationship with Jesus. Because in prison, you got time. In prison, you got time. There's not necessarily all kinds of people to talk to. It's certainly not good conversations. You can hear some great stories, but not necessarily good conversation. And I became a personal relationship. I became dependent on him. And the more I did that, the more I prayed, the more I began walking closer, it just became a more all-inclusive effect, just more powerful each time. And I became dependent on him. I became relying on him to where it was what I ate and breathed is all I knew. And slowly but surely, he transformed me from the inside out. Nothing that I could have done on my own. And he rebuilt me with Jesus as the cornerstone. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Thanks, please. That was at the perfect time because I was totally forgetting what I was going to say. I appreciate that. I totally appreciate that. So God began participating in the chapel. I began getting more involved, and God began to use me. First, just talking with other individual inmates, but then actually organizing and leading Bible studies, small groups, which in certain prisons is very difficult and actually and sometimes dangerous. They don't allow organization in a lot of prisons, at least not where I was at. So that became very difficult. So that's where I was. Fast forward now to where I am now. Been out of prison now for 5 years. It's like black and white for me. I just forgot what I was going to say. Jesus. First off, Jesus. Jesus came out with me. Jesus is still here. Jesus is still here. He came out with me. He was faithful. I went to college, got my degree from the University of Wisconsin. God placed me. Thank you. Thank you. You're not going to want to clap every single time because there's like literally too many praises. There's like literally too many. And then Neff is going to kill me for going over. He placed me in a job in finance. I was making over $100,000 a year. I can't believe it. It's hard enough as a criminal just getting a job. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. To where I was doing great financially. He introduced me to an amazing woman, my wife. You can tell. I mean, she got the short end of the stick. It's obvious. And she's even cooler in person. Amazing woman. And in 2 months, our first child, my first baby, little baby girl, will be born. Yeah, that's right. Now you can clap for that. Come on now. You guys can clap for that. You guys can clap for that. We're going to name her Isabella Grace. Her Isabella means God's promise. Isabella means God's promise, and everybody in prison, you have something you pray about. Even everybody here has those reoccurring prayers that they have throughout their whole life. Those one or two things. I had two things. Most people in prison always prayed for getting out early. That wasn't really one of mine. It was always me getting out of God's way because that's my habit. And the second one is just to place me in a family because I never really got to experience that. And as I'm talking to you guys, I've been praying for that prayer 15 years. I've been praying that prayer for 15 years, and God is doing it as we speak, as I'm speaking to you. All right. I didn't practice this at home like this. Just letting you guys know. And I just want to say that I couldn't have done any of this, all of this, and more. This is not possible. I tried to do this myself. I started at a young age trying to do this myself. When my dad left, I was the man of the house. I was the father. And I tried to do it, and I made a mess of it. I destroyed it over the course of 15 years. In prison, I gave God the pieces, the broken fragments. I was at 21 years old. I had money. I had girls, I had parties, I had everything I wanted and was looking for that joy and peace. I found joy and peace in prison. I found joy and peace and comfort in prison, in the arms of Jesus. And it's not something that, it goes to Philippians where it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's something that I couldn't do on my own. I tried to do it. I guess what I'm trying to say as far as my testimony, as far as him saying how I can encourage you, I know there's plenty of people in this room that have had tougher situations than I have. I know there's plenty of people in this room that are going through a tough situation right now. And I just want to say, I know sometimes it feels like you can't. Sometimes it feels like you can't, and you know what? You're right. You can't. You can't. But God can through you. God can through you. And it's just, I couldn't do it, but I can through Christ. Manny, he's amazing. Manny can't do it. He can't do it. But Christ through him can do all of this. Jesus can use Manny, and he can use each one of us. So I just say, whatever the issue is, if you're here tonight because it's the transformation in your heart that's needed, or it's a transformation in your child's heart, or it's the transformation in your parent's heart, or your spouse's heart, or whoever loved one it is, wherever you're in this room, you can't do it on your own. You can't. I've tried. You can try it. You can continue trying. Give it to him. Just give it to him. And I know if you're like me, you're going to take it back 15 minutes later. Give it back to him. All right? You find yourself worrying about it, that means you're not trusting in God. Just keep giving it to him. You're going to take it back and give it right back to him. Because if you're like me, and maybe you're not, but I destroy things. I think I'm very intelligent. I think I'm very smart. And I just have the ability to make things worse. Give it to him. And I promise you, I'm nothing special. If he's faithful to me, he's going to be faithful to you. Thank you guys so much. I'm humbled and honored. Thank you. God bless.